All right, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood topics in medicine: how antidepressants actually work. For decades, we've all been told this simple story about brain chemistry, but the real science, well, it's way more fascinating and honestly, a lot more hopeful.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll bust that old chemical imbalance myth wide open. Then we'll get into how these drugs really do their job, compare the new go-tos with the risky originals, and finally, see how this all fits into a much bigger picture of brain health.
Okay, first up, let's tackle the story that pretty much everyone has been told about depression: the chemical imbalance myth.
You've heard this a million times, right? Depression is just a lack of serotonin. And for a while, this idea was super powerful. It helped reduce a lot of stigma by framing depression as a clear biological problem. The only issue, after decades of research, there's just no solid evidence to back it up. The science has moved on.
So if it's not just a simple lack of serotonin, what's really going on inside the brain? And how do these medications actually manage to help people? Well, the answer points to something much more profound about the brain's amazing ability to change itself.
So then, how do they really work? Well, the biggest clue that the old theory was wrong came from a very specific and very consistent delay that doctors kept seeing in their patients. I mean, really think about this time gap. Antidepressants start boosting serotonin levels within hours of taking them. But people don't actually start to feel better for 4 to 6 weeks. If depression was just low serotonin, relief should be almost immediate, right? This delay is the smoking gun. It's the biggest clue that a much deeper, slower process is really at play.
And that deeper process is called neuroplasticity, which is just the brain's incredible capacity to physically change and rewire itself. The thinking now is that depression involves damage or weakening of key brain circuits. So these drugs don't just top up a chemical, they actually kickstart a long-term repair process.
So here's the crucial part. That initial serotonin boost is just the trigger. It's the first domino. It signals the brain to start making more of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. You can think of BDNF as fertilizer for your brain cells. Over weeks, it helps neurons grow new branches and form stronger connections, slowly remodeling and repairing those compromised circuits. And that is why it takes time to feel better.
This new focus on brain repair and neuroplasticity is what led to today's go-to medications, the much safer and much more precise SSRIs. SSRIs do exactly what their name says. They selectively target the serotonin system. They block the little protein that acts like a vacuum, sucking serotonin out of the synapse. This leaves more of it available to get that BDNF-driven remodeling process going. And their selectivity is the key. By not messing around with other neurotransmitters, they manage to avoid a lot of the nasty side effects of the older drugs. And their versatility is just remarkable. Because they're helping with a fundamental process, brain repair, SSRIs are effective for a whole spectrum of conditions that seem to be rooted in these compromised brain circuits, way beyond just depression.
But before the precision of SSRIs, the very first antidepressants, discovered totally by accident in the 1950s, were a different beast entirely. Let's talk about the MAOIs. If an SSRI is a precision tool, an MAOI is a sledgehammer. Instead of just targeting one system, it causes this massive, widespread increase in 3 major neurotransmitters: serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Now, this makes them incredibly potent, but also incredibly risky.
And their safety profile is exactly why clinical practice has shifted so dramatically. With MAOIs, you've got the constant risk of a hypertensive crisis, which is a deadly spike in blood pressure. They require a super strict diet, and an overdose can be lethal. SSRIs aren't without their own risks, of course, but they're in a completely different league of safety, which makes them the obvious first choice for most patients.
And that mandatory diet is no joke. All of these foods are super high in a compound called tyramine. Now, normally, the MAO enzyme in your gut just breaks it down, no problem. But when that enzyme is blocked by the drug, tyramine floods your system.
And the result is a full-blown medical emergency. We're talking a rapid, dangerous spike in blood pressure that can cause a stroke and can even be fatal. It just highlights the incredible vigilance patients needed on these older medications and why they're really only reserved for very specific treatment-resistant cases today. Okay, now here's where it gets truly fascinating. It turns out that medications are not the only way to trigger neuroplasticity and boost that all-important BDNF protein. There are other powerful tools we all have at our disposal.
It turns out our lifestyle choices can be powerful medicine for our brains. Things you see here, like diet, exercise, and sleep, they aren't just nice to have. They directly influence the very same brain repair pathways that antidepressants are designed to target. Take exercise, for instance. High-quality reviews have found that for many people, regular exercise can be just as effective as antidepressants for reducing symptoms. And why is that? Well, because just like the medications, exercise is a powerful way to increase levels of BDNF in the brain. And the link with sleep is just staggering. We used to think poor sleep was just a symptom of depression. Now we know it can actually be a cause. In fact, people with insomnia are twice as likely to develop depression. This changes everything. It means that fixing your sleep isn't just managing a side effect, it's treating the illness at its very core.
So let's put all of this together. We've moved from a simple, outdated chemical story to a dynamic new model of brain repair. So what does this new framework actually mean for treatment?
The big takeaway here is that the most effective treatment isn't an either-or choice between a pill and a lifestyle change. It's a both-and approach. The goal is to use every single tool available, medication, diet, exercise, sleep, to create an environment where the brain can repair itself and build resilience against whatever comes next.
This really reframes our entire approach, doesn't it? It moves us away from a one-size-fits-all model toward a future of truly personalized medicine, where the right prescription might not be a pill at all, but a unique combination of tools tailored perfectly to help each individual.